Hey everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Monday, October 23rd, 2023. I am Jer Stays, and joining me on the line is
Fletcher Sharp.
Good morning, everyone, but not a great way to have to start the week. There's some positive news that we're going to talk about. Don't get me wrong. There's a riverfront opening, some things, but I think we have to start with a story, Fletcher, that has made national news from the city of Detroit. Samantha Woll, a foundation, I'm not going to call her a pillar, I'll say a foundation of the local community. She was on the board, president of the board, I believe, of the synagogue downtown. We've actually highlighted that synagogue downtown in a recent previous episode. Somebody who was, involved in bridging gaps between different groups. Unfortunately and sadly and terribly was stabbed to death and found outside of her place in Lafayette Park. This has gotten national attention, Fletcher. As somebody who's a second-degree connection, this one's a hard one to talk about.
Yeah. Obviously when people die, people say nice things about them, but I was just on social media and flipping through, you're on Instagram scrolling through stories, and at least 7 or 8 of them were about her, and at least 6 of them, maybe 7, were legit. I didn't know her very well, but we used to speak a few times, and she was always very kind to me. Or this is someone who I would see every single day on my way to work. And they were genuine. You felt like how much this bothered and shattered people, and it's a senseless thing to happen. And I'm you don't ever want to see this happen to anybody, but to have it specifically happen to someone who is doing so many good things for the city and someone who genuinely loved the city and the people in the city, every person in the city. It's a terrible thing to have to read and see.
Yeah, 40 years old. What strikes me is the difference between the national conversation and the local conversation, and how much I can tell right away somebody is completely full of it on social media, and it's part of my overall kind of pullback from some things for social media for anything serious, because you see the comments, right? People try to link things. And to be clear, as of this recording, and there will be a police update later in the day, there have been no links to anti-Semitism found with this. But you'll see on social media connections to, say, Congresswoman Tlaib, which then you realize right away you're full of it because Rashida and Samantha were friends. It to me is this thing where you look through the prism of the national conversation, you realize how void of care and nuance and impact and all the lives that she touched. And yeah, it's why I don't do national politics very often, because this conversation goes way off the rails. And I understand it's a very tough time. It's a very tough time right now in the world. But I also think it's really important to hold off on all of these conspiracy connections until we actually know something. And I know that's kind of anathema to how people work, especially around crime. But it's really been hard to watch as somebody who has literally a number of friends who were close to her.
I saw a post on Twitter that actually almost made me break my phone screen by punching it. And we were just scrolling through, you're seeing a bunch of people, condolences, in memoriam and such. And someone tagged Rashida and was like, "This is your fault." And I'm like, bro, if you don't, I won't repeat exactly what I said, but I'm sure if you really want to find it, you can. But you have to be a truly ghoulish person, truly ghoulish, devoid of any real human empathy, to find a post talking about how great this person was and how their life was snatched away and how they're trying to figure things out and be like, it's this Come on, there's a time and place, and the time for that's never. Honestly, the time is never, and the place is probably pretty similar to the time. But it's definitely not the place where everyone's hurting and in condolences in memoriam, trying to figure out what the next step is after having someone who meant a lot to them taken from their life. And if that's how you operate, that's fine. But I would respectfully request that you stay very far away from me, because I have some unkind things to say about you. But no, to your point, that's kind of what's happened with social media to a degree, especially when dealing with violence or murder and things of that nature, is instead of, logic coming out and people being like, oh yeah, let's investigate, let's wait for these reports to come out, especially on Twitter, unfortunately, because it's become what it's become. someone will pop up, act like they're an actual journalist and say, it's because of this one thing. And then it'll run and you'll look and see that it has 1 million views. And then it'll come out like that's actually not the case at all. And unfortunately, by that time, the damage has been done way too much. And it's almost unfixable. This is not the time to do that. This is someone who meant so much to the city, meant so much to the area, someone who was trying to bridge the gap between Jewish and Muslim people. She loved everyone. I don't mean that as like, oh, mother. No, she legit, many people, many different backgrounds I've seen talk about how open and how caring and how lovely she was of a person. So to have anyone make those thoughts in their head, let alone in public, there are places for you, and one of them is not around me.
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and something my grandmother told me, and it's something that I think still holds true. If I don't know something, I don't say anything about it, right? Like if I'm not an expert on it, I don't need to pile in on a bunch of things just to like get points. This event and some other recent events, I think have really changed me as like a media creator and a person. I mean, I've always leaned more towards not being as controversial although that doesn't necessarily do as great for the clicks, and it's part of the reason why I write a newsletter, part of the reason why I do a podcast is to take that beat and like wait a second and learn and let people smarter than me figure things out and then talk about it and then talk about the impact. And like this one, there are reporters from all over the country now. I saw one on Today this morning sitting outside of the synagogue. I really hope that in all of this, that people remember all the work that she did, and the lives that she touched over the political points, because this country doesn't need more political point scoring. It needs leaders. It needs people with heart. It needs the good people to show up to like with open arms. And that's part of why this is all so tragic and sad too,
And while people are trying to score political points, the person who actually did this thing is like still needing to be found. So how about we stop doing that and do the best we can to find this person who did this?
Okay, Fletcher, let's get into something a little bit more positive, something that I think a lot of people felt really good about on Saturday. And I went down there. The Detroit Riverwalk has opened all the way from downtown Detroit up to the MacArthur Bridge or the Belle Isle Bridge. This last section was the old Uniroyal tire plant and had a ton of remediation that had to be done with it. And let me tell you, in that respect, that morning, for that event, for that moment in time, was a glorious, glorious time on the riverfront.
Yeah, I spoke to a friend of mine, Marlon. Shouts out to Marlon, who was down there. A big bike guy. I asked him a few questions. I'm going to ask you a few later as well, Jer. But yeah, I was like, how was the vibe around there? And he's like, it seemed pretty wholesome, pretty family oriented. A lot of people were there. It seemed like a really good time. He's like, honestly, I'm just really happy that I can ride my bike along the Riverwalk to Belle Isle, which is something that is helpful since I live down here. And I'm sure a lot of people have that same sentiment. People want to get to Belle Isle, but having to cross that like really murderous type of way around Jefferson is like really not a great way if you're a pedestrian. Like walking, like driving, sure, but walking, a lot of people don't adhere to the lights at times. It's a way for you to now get down there and not have to worry about that at all. So if there's a chance that someone who's a pedestrian can get onto the island and not have to cross through the middle of that, 100% I'm glad for it. Plus, it gives people who are not, native to the city a chance to actually walk along the Riverwalk and see many more things they might not be able to see beforehand.
It's kind of like a Pokemon evolving to me. I was, recently was down in Chicago and saw their Riverwalk. I've seen some other Riverwalks. This is much more of closer to the final form to me of what the Riverwalk should be. And our Riverwalk is one for longer walking, for biking, for exercise. It stretches a really long way, and this new addition, which has been in the works for a long time, really caps it off. And you go to what is, I think, an underappreciated park, which is Gabrielle Richard Park, which, by the way, actually used to be an electricity-themed theme park back in the day, if you didn't know. Which is crazy. Like, it was like, oh, electricity's here and you can try the rides. And now it's a really great place. And I'm interested to see, what'll happen with that. Right next to it is the Broadhead Armory, which I don't know where the plans are right now, but there have been plans to move the parade company there and have an event space along the riverfront. Like, the river is one of our greatest assets as a city and as a region. And it was kind of an honor to be part of that first parade. I know there was nothing special about it. I didn't have to fill out any forms. I wasn't a VIP or anything. But to see, basically 2 decades of work come together to finally get this far is a huge thing.
Of everything you mentioned, what are you most excited about for the new and improved war turtle of Riverwalks?
You're going to call it a war turtle, huh? I was going to go for like Eevee or something pretty.
It's water, and I like Squirtle. So, I'm sure when we reach the final evolution, they're going to put 2 big old cannons there, so it's the Blastoise of Riverwalks. But until then, we can dream with a winged turtle. But what are you most excited about from everything you mentioned?
Listeners will now know how much of a nerd we really are. For me, it's this feeling of connection and these views where you've got this very family-friendly Mount Elliott Park that's got a great water feature play scale for the kids. And then you go ahead and go along this area that's been forbidden for so long because of environmental contamination. And it really is like a metaphorical and real kind of change from our kind of more, industrial past to a different future, a cleaner future. As somebody who's remembers when the Uniroyal plant was standing, the amount of remediation they had to do to make that spot good for what they wanted to do, it cost a lot of money and it took a lot of time. And it's something that kind of locked off what should be a premier location in the city. It's so crazy to me. I remember when the Big Boy was open and thriving and all these other things. Like, it's so crazy to me that corner that has so much going for it for so long it's been difficult to get things going over there. And to me, I look at it as a real hope for the future, a realization of what the city of Detroit really could be in a better world.
I've eaten so much bacon at that Big Boy. To me, I'm kind of glad it's not really there anymore because I used to get in trouble eating so much bacon, then promptly getting very sick and having nowhere to go. So just personally for me, I'm sad for everyone else, but like, I'm good because I don't need to be getting bacon sick in public anymore.
Did you do like the buffet? How did this work? How did this unlimited bacon work?
Yeah, it was a buffet. I was like, they're like, come and, pay for your plate and come here. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then I would go and I'm like, let me get 1 waffle, put that there, maybe 1 pancake. And then when people are looking, I just would take the tin of bacon and just start shoveling it onto my plate till they're like, hey, stop that. And I'm like, all right, my bad. And I would go sit down and just keep eating. And whoever I was with at the time was like, are you going to finish all of that? And I'm like, yep, it's on my plate. I'm going to finish it. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't feel very well. I'm sweating a lot and I feel sick, but I can't tell anyone that because they just watched me eat maybe a third of my weight in bacon. So, like, in a way, I deserved it. Like, don't do that. If anyone's listening, please don't do that. You're going to regret it for many reasons later. Frankly, I'm surprised that Tim Hortons lasted as long as it did because it didn't really feel like it was a good spot for it. I mean, sure, you got the people who are coming from East Side to go get breakfast, stop in, get something, get some coffee, get some tidbits, get some donuts. But like, just the location of it was strange because you got people trying to come out onto a very busy Jefferson.
It also feels like Yellow Light grabbed up a lot of that traffic. They're a little bit closer to they're in Jefferson Chalmers and they're closer to the point, so you'd actually have more time to eat your food. And then
they're also a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever had the Tim Hortons like slushy coffee drink?
I did, and yeah, I'm thankful for Yellow Lights.
Right. Like, it's like they saw it and they're like, yeah, we're going to suplex you down the road and we're going to do better.
I mean, yeah.
So a couple things that listeners put out there about the riverfront, they're kind of surprised it took so long and that it was, in the neighborhood of $180 million to get done. But I don't think people remember, and you might, how messed up that riverfront was for a long time. It was basically all industrial, and it took a long time to get the land, to get the money together, to fundraise. Like, to me, this was kind of proof of what you can do in Detroit if you have the proper resources. And this is the proper resources to do this.
Oh, definitely. And again, it highlights, like you said, how important it is to have certain establishments in that riverfront area. And just, overall, I think it's good for the city. It makes people actually want to explore the city as opposed to just driving through everywhere, which I know we are the Motor City, but like, you should want to walk some places too.
The one thing I'll say before we move on is that the first time I was able to really casually walk under the MacArthur Bridge, so cool, man. Like, so cool to be underneath those trusses. And, I'm going to put up a video and a TikTok about it, but so cool to see the city from a different angle than even I, who've been around for a long time. Like, it just gave me chills to be able to do that.
Oh, for sure. The city's gorgeous, and this gives it a chance for other people to understand how gorgeous it is.
And shout out to all the listeners I ran into, the hugs, the handshakes, everything else. It was so good to see all of you. I realized that Riverwalk people, Riverfront people are people, Fletcher.
Well, I mean, because typically if you're there, like you're someone who's like a mover, even if you're not like someone who just finished running the marathon or something. Like if you're on the Riverwalk, it's you want to move and you want to be active. So you're probably a toucher too, handshake, hug, whatever. So like those are people I like. So I'm glad that was the experience.
All right, Fletcher, a little bit of Lions disappointment to close out the show here. That wasn't just a loss, that was a shellacking, and I feel like it told us a couple things about some tweaks I think we need to make before like the end of the season. I mean, I still feel real confident about like the division, and I feel confident about the playoffs, but I feel like we ran into a different kind of team, and it showed us where we could still improve.
I mean, I said it before, I thought the Lions would win, but I said it before that they would struggle. They always have struggled with mobile quarterbacks, and Lamar Jackson is not just a mobile quarterback. He is a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. He is an MVP winning quarterback. He's one of the most dynamic players who ever played in this league. And I said make him a passer, which feels disrespectful. I love Lamar Jackson. He's one of my favorite players currently, almost one of my favorites all time. But I understand if you have a choice between him throwing a 40-yard bomb and him running for 50, 60 yards, you prefer him throw it because at least if he throws it, there's a chance you might deflect it. Whereas if he's running, most people in the defense are not going to catch him. He's just that elusive. He's that quick. And unfortunately, he hurt them both ways in a 38-6 loss, which I'm not necessarily surprised that Lamar did so well. I'm kind of surprised that the offense did so poorly. Jared Goff had to throw the ball 53 times, no touchdowns and an interception. Good for Jahmyr Gibbs to get his first running touchdown. Unfortunately, he couldn't really celebrate because they were down 38-0. And of course, in true Lions fashion, they went for 2 and did not get it. But I mean, some people had some good games. Amon-Ra St. Brown finished with over 100 yards, which I think he would trade every single one of them for a victory, but I don't really think this says that much about. I mean, it says that the Lions struggle with a mobile quarterback. So if they happen to get to the Super Bowl, play against the Ravens, might be a problem. I mean, the rest of the season, they really only have one mobile quarterback they're facing, and that's Justin Fields for the Bears. And the Bears are not as good as the Ravens by like a wide margin. And even losing to the Ravens, who now are 5-2 atop their division, the Lions are now 5-2 and atop their division. Every other team only has 2 wins. I'm really not that worried from a fan perspective. I'm really not that worried at all. The Ravens are good, and good teams will hurt you. It's the first time they kind of got punched in the face. And knowing the way Dan Campbell has his players get ready and knowing the way the players are receptive to it, they'll be ready to play Monday night, another big game against the Raiders, who are sputtering. They have Devontae Adams, who's a great receiver, but he's not thrilled to be in Oakland. They're probably going to try to force him the ball to keep him happy. So if you know that, just watch him and then work backwards from there.
I would have felt better if we lost like 38 to like 21 or 4. Like, you know what I mean? I would have felt like, or kept their score down a little bit. I guess that's what makes me nervous is the shellacking.
I'm not that surprised to give up 38 points to Lamar Jackson. He won the MVP in 2019, not that long ago, and 3 years before that, he won the Heisman Trophy. So it shows a tremendous star power they have at quarterback. 38 points to him is not that big of a deal. In terms of adjustments to make to a running quarterback, or not running, but a more mobile quarterback, you got to have faster linebackers. You got to have what's called a quarterback spy, where one of your linebackers forgets all other options, and his job is to mimic the quarterback. So what is he doing? Is he dropping back to pass? I drop back to pass. Is he stepping up to run? I step up to run. Whatever you do, wherever you go, you want to go wash your hands in the bathroom, I'll be outside the stall waiting. Like, that's what a quarterback spy is supposed to do. And unfortunately, it helps because it limits that quarterback. It's what happened. It's what teams used to do to Michael Vick. But the problem is it takes someone out of the defense's way. So if you have people dropping into coverage, Like, he's not dropping into coverage. He's watching the quarterback. So if you can fool that spy, it leaves a gap in that defense, which if the quarterback can figure that out, then you got another issue altogether. And sometimes it doesn't matter, like with Michael Vick and sometimes with Lamar Jackson, they'll spy. But because those guys were so fast, you could spy, but you have to catch them. And, like, sometimes that's a problem. Again, because they're greased lightning. I was a bit more surprised the offense didn't put up more points, but again, John Harbaugh typically runs a pretty good defense with the Ravens. What can you do at that point? But again, I'm overall not that worried. They have the Raiders coming up. The Raiders, again, are sputtering. They're not doing that well. There's a little bit of turmoil there, and I think this is a chance for them to right the ship on a national public way, even more national public way, because it's going to be Monday Night Football at Ford Field.
But you do feel good about the Lions' chances against the Raiders.
Ever since Al Davis died, and even before Al Davis died, like, they still had a bit of turmoil a little bit. And since he died, they really have not been good at all. They've had some characters. Marshawn Lynch joined them for a few seasons. They had Antonio Brown for a few seasons. They had Derek Carr and now currently Devontae Adams. And, like, they're good for sound bites. But, like, I don't think they're good enough to be worried. I know their fans are, like, truly terrifying fans, like actually people I am scared of and don't ever want to meet. But, like, on the field, I'd be more worried about maybe a few cheap shots, if anything. But I see the Lions taking control of this game. As long as, the offense steadies itself back out, the defense will figure it out. And I know some people want to blame, like, they gave up 38 points. A lot of that was the fact that they were tired because the offense went out. The first 3 touchdowns for the Ravens were touchdown, Lions 3 and out. Touchdown, Lions 3 and out. Touchdown. So after a while, your defense gets tired. Like, when they get to have a break that's only lasts 4 plays, you get tired. And when you're chasing after someone who's, like, inhumanly fast, who has receivers who will catch the ball today, you're going to have some issues. So I don't think it's going to be an issue Monday night. I think they're going to take care of business. If I had to pick a score, probably something like 28-10. I don't have much faith in the Raiders' offense, and I have even less faith in their defense.
Two quick things. One, we've got our happy hour on Wednesday night over at Castalia in Midtown. It would be great to see you, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic things. Would love to talk with you. We're doing our little We Didn't Win party, which I'm excited about. I'm excited about it. And then finally, we're actually going to do a video podcast, a special episode specifically on YouTube, and of course, the audio will be in your podcast feeds, as Detroit City FC pulled off the upset win. We didn't talk about a bunch about it in this episode because we're going to devote a whole episode to it later in the week. But Fletcher, I think we got some fun things in store for people.
Yep, if you are a fan of the show, then you will definitely be happy. And if you're not a fan of the show, don't know why you're listening right now, but you will be one at the end of the week.
Statistics say something like 20% of people hate listen.
I mean, I'll take all the hate listens, honestly, at this point.
All right, we are done for this Monday. Thank you so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. Remember, we're supported by our members, patreon.com/dailydetroit. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharp.
Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around town.